It was December 19th, 1991, and my instructor in the right side of the airplane said, David, why don't you go ahead and pull up to the base of the tower? Now this was, mind you, after 8 successful takeoffs and landings on my part. And he didn't help me at all that day. So he said, pull up to the base of the tower, and I said, no. And he said, well, why not? I said, well, because that means you're going to get out, and I'm going to have to fly this thing all by myself. And he said, well, isn't that the point of all these lessons? You pay me, I teach you. I said, yeah, that's the point, but I'm not ready to do this. According to him, I was. He said, he said, before we go any further, he said, just pull up to the base of the tower. We'll talk about it. I said, all right. So I pulled up to the base of the tower, and he hopped out. And I said, now what? And he said, well, he gave me a piece of paper. He wrote down, David Jeremiah can legally fly this airplane all by himself because I said so. And he handed me the piece of paper, and I looked at it. I said, great. We'll find this in a fiery heap in a matter of minutes. So he said, just go fly the airplane and do just what you did this morning 8 times already. All right. So I called the tower. I said,
Oxnard Tower, Cessna 5470 Bravo, request permission to taxi.
They said, 5470 Bravo, permission to taxi granted, runway 26 right. 5470 Bravo, permission to taxi granted, runway 26 right.
I know, I heard that.
Anyway, I was a little nervous. I was anticipating bad things. So I pushed forward on the throttle and I headed out toward the active runway, and as I was going out there I thought, this is really stupid. You know what I can do? I can just stop. I can just pull into the hangar. I can shut the airplane off. I can look at the instructor and say, this is great. I had such a good time. Let's not do this. But I pushed forward on the throttle and started moving forward. I thought, well, we can go up to the end of the runway. And I looked at all my instruments. I looked at the panel, and everything was just fine. The way it's supposed. To my amazement, everything was going just the way it was supposed to be. And this is just taxiing. That's all, nothing else. So I taxied out to the run-up area, checked it, got the engine all revved up. Everything's running perfect. Oil pressure's good. Altimeter's set just perfectly. My VSI's looking great. Airspeed indicator, everything's working just great. Turn coordinate, perfect. Ready to go.
Oxnard Tower, Cessna 5470 Bravo, request permission to take off.
5470 Bravo, clear to take off, runway 26 right.
You guys don't get this, do you? I really don't want to do this.
So anyway, I pulled out onto the runway, and I looked around to make sure that, there wasn't any other traffic. I mean, air traffic control said go ahead, but I knew it was always safe just to look around just one more time before you actually commit to flying an airplane. So I don't know if you've ever been in a little Cessna 152. It's a little 90 horsepower, not a lot of power, but it's not big by any means. So I pushed forward on the throttle, and the wheels started to turn. The propeller's going just the way it's supposed to. Everything, oil pressure comes up. Everything's just great. Not a problem at all. And I started going. Now, if you've been in a 152, you know what I'm talking about. It's kind of like being in a real small Volkswagen, like the old Volkswagen Beetle, the old style Volkswagen, where you're really kind of cramped in there. But the difference is when you get this Cessna 152 up to 55 miles an hour, it comes off the ground. You're flying an airplane. So sure enough, I get going down the runway. Everything looks just great. It's a beautiful day. No clouds in the sky, no sunshine. Gorgeous day. We get going, and I'm at 50 miles an hour. Look down at the airspeed indicator, 50 miles an hour. And I thought, you can still stop this. You can be done with this. You can just pull into the hangar, say, had a great time, see you guys later, and come home and say, you know what? I almost flew an airplane all by myself. All of a sudden, a gust of wind at that very moment came down the runway, and guess what? According to the airspeed indicator, I was going 55 miles an hour, and I was about 6 inches off the ground. Now, any pilot knows that a landing from 6 inches and a landing from 6,000 feet is the same landing, so I'm committed. I gotta go. So I started climbing, and everything's working just perfect, and as I climbed out to about 500 feet, I'm gonna take a left turn. I got a few left turns to make to set myself up on final approach and make a nice landing. I'm just turning that 500 feet. Everything's perfect. I look down at my console. Everything's perfect. I make another left turn. I'm at about 1,000 feet right now. And I looked over, and all of a sudden I realized there's a red light blinking in the lower left-hand corner of the console, lower left, blinking, and it says, "You're gonna die, you're gonna die." Well, that's what I thought it was saying. Actually, it was saying the voltage is a little bit low. It's a low voltage light indicator. If you don't know about electricity, I still don't know what it does. But it's blinking at me now at this point saying, "You're gonna die, you're gonna die, you're gonna die." And I got on the radio real quick and I said, "Oxnard Tower, System 5470 Bravo, can I talk to my instructor?" And they came back and said, 5470 Bravo, your instructor's not here. I said, "Yes, he is. Let me talk to him." I knew he was. And sure enough, he was. He comes on and he says, "David, what's the matter?" I said, "The red low voltage light is blinking on the lower left-hand side of the car. What do I do?" He said, "David, did you read the book? What did the book say?" Now, I got to admit, I'm not much of one for homework, but thankfully, the week before, I did read about the low voltage light in my book, just like you're supposed to do. And I said, "Well, the book says to," mind you, I'm thinking to myself, why don't you just give me the answer? Why are you looking to me? You're the instructor. I knew what it said. It said, cycle the master switch and everything will be all right. But just all you got to do, it's like turning on and off a light switch. So I reached up and I turned on and off that light switch, and sure enough, the low voltage light wasn't blinking anymore. It wasn't yelling, "You're going to die, you're going to die." I looked over at the altitude indicator. I'm at 1,500 feet. I'm really flying an airplane, really, honestly, all by myself. Now I had to make a decision. Did I want to land this thing in a ball, or did I want to roll it out just like I did 8 times earlier that day and 50 times before that? Maybe 100 times, 200 times before that. So I decided we're going to land this thing the way it's supposed to be done. So by the numbers, I turned another left turn and another left turn, and sure enough, there's the final approach right in front of me. There's the runway that I'm supposed to be on right in front of me. Pulled back on the propeller, and everything started to slow down, and the airplane started just the way it's supposed to, slow down. And just like when you took off at 55 miles an hour, right about 55 miles an hour is where you're supposed to be when you touch your wheels down at the end of the runway. I still had a choice to make. Am I going to mess this up, or am I going to squeak this on? Sure enough, about 15 seconds later, there I am at the threshold of the runway at 55 miles an hour, and I heard my wheels go chirp as I pulled back just slightly. Chirp! Nose still up in the air, back wheels on the ground. Boy, was I thrilled. I let out the biggest yahoo! All of a sudden, just a big, I'm sure they heard me in the tower. I let out a big yell, and do you know that day I went around, I did 8 more takeoffs and landings all by myself. Now, I could have quit. I could have given up at any time, except way up in the air. Well, I could have, but I wouldn't be talking to you today. Later on that day, I met up with my son. He was about, he was about 6 years old at the time. And I was cooking dinner at home later that night. And every once in a while during the day, I thought, I flew an airplane all by myself. Every once in a while, I'd just stop and I'd amaze myself. I flew an airplane all by myself today. And I looked over at my son, Jonathan, and he's kind of taking a little drink of his milk at the time. I'll never forget. And I said, "Jonathan." He said, "Yeah, Dad." I said, "Your dad flew an airplane all by himself. I flew an airplane all by myself." He goes, "That's awesome, Dad."